What's up, everybody? Che here. I know it's been a while since I've made any content or dropped a video, so I just wanted to drop this one real quick just to kind of let you know um, about the direction that I'm going and the direction that I think that this whole movement should go into. And yeah, I'm speaking for a whole movement. If you don't know, pay attention, listen closely, because I'm about to break it down for you, right? So most of you know my story. 15 years incarcerated, went from being, hardcore atheist, Marxist, to now a, born again believer, Christian, you know, following on the path of God. I went from being a leftist in politics to being conservative. Most of you have seen that journey. If you haven't, you can buy my book, The Freedom Doctrine, My Path to Canaan. It'll talk all about that. How I went from the streets to the pen to now I'm out here, doing God's work. Um, so I kind of wanted to talk a little bit about that and why I feel like this is important. So since 2020, I started speaking out on a lot of these issues politically, socially, all the things that are going on in the world, things that were going on at the time, especially with COVID, the elections, the whole BLM and all that type of stuff, and everything that we saw. And I thought, it was important to speak out. I had just at the time, like, really came to the realization of that my politics didn't align with my personal belief system, right? That transformation was actually happening like right before COVID, like at the end of 2019. And when COVID hit, I was not fooled by it at all. I was not with the masks, not with the lockdown, not with any of that. I saw it all for the scam that it was. So I started speaking out on these issues, and as I started to connect with other people, other like-minded people, um, you know, getting involved with politics and seeing how that game was played, seeing the social issues and the things that were going on with this with the indoctrination of kids and all these type of things that I was seeing, right? I started paying attention. Like, I'm the type of person, like, if I'm going to see something happening, I want to know why it's happening, right? I want to know what's the purpose that people are thinking a certain way or doing a certain action. And so, as we go down this path and we speak out and we make content and we go to rallies and we hold speeches and we do these type of things to mobilize people in the direction that we think that this nation needs to go in, you start to critique why we're doing it. You start to analyze it. And I start to look and saying, well, what is the difference? We say we need to wake people up. People need to wake up. And I feel like that we're fighting a losing battle because we're not actually hitting, the root cause of the problem. Like, for example, when I looked at COVID, there was two types of people, right? There was the type of people like myself, and I'm assuming like yourself, who didn't buy it, right? Who were like off the jump, like, this is crazy, and we didn't conform, right? We questioned why. We examined the logic, we analyzed the problem, and came to a conclusion that it didn't make sense. And then you had a lot of other people who they were just marched, you know, in file, did whatever they was told. Put on a mask, put on two masks, put on three masks, stay in the house, never come out, yada yada yada. People did exactly what they were told. So what I do is I look at that and I say, why are there people that questioned it and didn't conform, and then there was people who were just easily and readily just ready to go with whatever the narrative was, right? So when I look at those things, I notice two things, right? I notice two things, and I'm going to talk about these two things, and why and how it is personal to me as well, right? So go back to this. When you're given a piece of information, right, you can do one of two things. The first thing that you can do is you're going to process the information, right? And you can process the information, and then from there, you can decide to analyze the information, investigate it, weigh it against other pieces of information or knowledge that may contradict that piece of information, may validate that piece of information, weigh it against your own common sense and reason and judgment, your own discernment. You you take that information and you run it through the gauntlet of tests to try to arrive at a conclusion. And so then you arrive at a conclusion and you base that conclusion on the evidence and on the investigation that you just did. And then you arrive at a conclusion and then you act on it. So, for example, when they tell you, "Hey, wear two masks," you ran that through, you analyzed it, and you looked at it, and you said, "Nah, man, that doesn't make any sense. I'm not going to do that." Right? The other thing that you can do is just accept the information because you trust the source, right? And a lot of people did that. And when I looked at those people, the reason why I feel like those people did that is because, for a number of reasons, but mainly because, one, it was easier. It's easier to trust the experts than to actually think about it on your own. It's easier to just delegate that thinking to people who you are told that are superior in knowledge and reasoning than you are. So a lot of people just went along with it. Those were the people that they didn't want to analyze it. They were either didn't have enough time, and I understand that, man. Life is going. So some people don't have the time to look into matters. But you didn't have the time, you were too lazy, you were just too trusting, and you were willing to put your life in the so-called expert's hand. So that's what happened. Those are the two types of people. So when I look at that, I say, well, what's the difference between these two people, right? Because if I'm trying to wake up a person who just wants to blindly follow and is just trusting the experts and delegating thinking and reasoning to somebody else, everything that I say to them is going to go in one ear and out the other. They're not going to listen. So I started to examine and say, what's the difference between these two people, right? And the first thing I noticed, and this, like I said, is personal to me too, and it's things that I feel like I need to speak out about, and tell people about. Number one is faith. People that trust government and trust academia and trust experts put more of their faith into those entities than they do in a higher power, and that being God, right? So this is why it was important to shut down churches. This is why it was important to shut down religion. This is why they have such a problem, especially here in this country, with faith and Christianity and God. And they would rather replace those with government and academia and experts and scientists and science, that science is controlled and paid for, right? They don't want people who rely on something greater than themselves, who rely on their spirit and the spirit of God, right? And so for me, that's my journey, right? I've been a person who didn't believe in God. I've been a person who believed in myself or science and those type of things. And I realize that now, as I've come to a point where I have really renewed my faith and rededicated my life to God and to the ministry of Christ, I feel like it's more important for me to speak out on those things, right? It's more important to speak out and to get people to understand that you need to have faith. We need to connect back with God. We need to get back in correct order, right? We need to understand that our submission can only be to God and not to any other entity, and not to man, not to government, not to even the Constitution. Our submission needs to be to God. And I know that rubs a lot of people, especially in the conservative side or the libertarian side, that want smaller government and want to remove God and the separation from church and state. I personally, I don't see that. I think that that's a recipe for disaster. I feel like the problem with our nation is that we are not in alignment with God. Our morals and our values are not in alignment with um, our purpose, and our purpose comes from God. That's it. You can disagree with me, you can get mad, you can unsubscribe, you can unfollow, you can do all those type of things. That's cool, but I'm not going to back down from this because I see the true power in God, and I feel like the true power is people really putting their faith in the Lord and their faith in biblical values and morals and principles that come from a higher power. And so people like that, we don't back down just because the government says something. our faith is number one, right? That's our resilience. We stand resilient on the faith. And I feel like that if we had more of that, and if we can get in line and under that banner of, you know, God and his word, we would be a lot more prosperous. And I feel like the biggest mistake that we have made is allowed a lot of these ideologies to come in, to take form, take root, and they've produced bad fruit, and they're spoiling the whole bunch. And I feel like it's up to us, the God-fearing people, to really stand on that, stand on those principles, right? The second thing that I looked at, and I said a lot of the people that didn't fold and didn't back down were independent minded people, right? They were people that were entrepreneurs. They were people that were, self sufficient type of people. They were people that believed in self determination, right? And so when I look at that, and what's the simplest form of self determination? What is the one part of yourself and your life that you can control? And that is your own physical body, your own health. And so when I look at the system that is way that it's set up, I see people that are being destroyed because the system has taken control of their body and they've taken control of their health, right? So this is why they wanted to shut down gyms. This is why they only prescribed remedies to anything is going through the big pharmaceutical companies, or the private the own corporate healthcare providers. All those things want you to submit to them when you have it within your capability to take control of your own body, your own health, and your own life. And so I feel like when I look at the things, I look at us and I say, man, people are unhealthy, right? Physically, they're unhealthy. They've been unhealthy since they were a kid. They're addicted to certain substances, whether it probably starts from sugar and then being addicted to social media. They're chasing dopamine, and that progresses. If most of you don't know that I do a program where I work with men who are overcoming addiction, overcoming criminal behavior. So a lot of them are getting out of prison. They're getting out of jail. They're coming off of the streets. They've been high on drugs. They're overcoming addiction. And one of the things that we do to work with them to overcome their addiction is to train them, physically train them, right? If you don't know, I am a certified personal trainer. That's what I do. I train people. I try to get their body and their minds back into place in right order. Again, it all goes back to order. So I feel like, when your nutrition is bad and you don't work out and you're in poor health, I don't care if you're awake to the things that are going on. The enemy looks at you and said, I'll just wear you down, because physically you're not capable of fighting this fight. So if we're going to wake people up, we need people to be of faith, and we also need people to be strong physically. And that strong physically will turn into strong mentally, because when you have to work out and you're disciplined in your diet, you're disciplined in your workouts, and you abstain from certain things, it makes you mentally stronger. See, a lot of people they just conformed because it was too much. They wanted to travel. They couldn't stand being alone. They couldn't stand being stuck in the house. They couldn't stand not being able to do the things that they wanted to do and go out and party and drink and have fun and do all that. That's where they killed them. I knew a lot of people who submitted to giving to the jab simply because they wanted to travel, simply because they wanted to go to clubs. Really. Now, how they look now when all that is null and void. But I'm just saying, like, it just shows you the lack of character and the lack of discipline that people have. And these are things that you can cultivate. You're not born with discipline. You're not born with character. You cultivate character by how you overcome adversity. And I think that we are a nation that has become so soft and so dependent on other people taking care of us that anytime adversity comes our way, we run and we cry and we say, help us, please stop it. It hurts. It doesn't feel good. It makes me uncomfortable. But when you deliberately putting yourself in adverse situations by giving yourself strenuous workouts, by disciplining yourself in how you eat and how you take care of yourself, you build up mental discipline and you build up strength. So those are the two things, man. Going forward, I'm really going to focus on. I want to highlight what I'm doing with these men over here. We're in the heart of South Central LA. We meet every Saturday. I'm going to be training them like I train my clients, right? Because we got to get them, because these dudes are addicted. And I know, and I've been a person, I've been to jail, right? I've been to prison. I spent 15 years in prison. I know what it's like to be having addiction. I know what it's like to be stuck in a cycle of criminality and not knowing how to get out of it. I got out of it because, for one, my faith in God, and two, I started to learn to take care of and control what I could control, and first and foremost was my body. Being disciplined to work out, being disciplined to eat right, being disciplined to take care of myself. If I could show you how people who are addicted to hardcore drugs can overcome their problems by being disciplined and staying and taking care of their bodies, man, there's nothing that you can't overcome. So those are two things I want to really touch on. I appreciate you guys for watching this whole video. I'm gonna have more coming your way. We're gonna talk about different things. Like I said, let's talk about this stuff, man. Let's get it out there. Let's have these discussions. Let's wake people up, but let's get people primed to wake up. That's the main thing. Till then, I'm Che, No Spoon Podcast. I'm out.